I'm Mariah Williams. I'm the Ohio Program Director here at Solar United Neighbors. This is our Ohio Solar Switch Together presentation. A little bit of housekeeping before we dive in any further. You would have been joining us today with your audio turned off, and we would like it if you would keep it that way for the presentation, just so that everybody is able to hear me clearly throughout the presentation. Please submit your questions into the chat. There is Chris from our staff is manning the chat, so he'll be keeping up with those questions and anything that needs a little bit more explaining or anything that maybe is very specific to Ohio and he doesn't have a ton of expertise in, he will be sharing with me at the end when we will answer all of those questions. And again, this webinar is being recorded and we will share to you a link afterwards so that you are able to watch it again, share it with friends, what have you. So we have a bunch of partners. I'm going to hit on some of our big ones. If you're joining us from the Central Ohio area, these names will all be familiar. Sustainable Columbus is actually who invited us and wants us to hold these for them. That's a division of the City of Columbus. And then a lot of our favorite Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, Green Columbus types of organizations are participating as well, bringing you that information. You might be seeing it in their newsletters and those sorts of things. And then if you're joining us from Northeast Ohio, the County of Cuyahoga, their Sustainability Division is who invites us there to that area. And then we're lucky to have great folks in the city of Cleveland, Oberlin, and the village of Oakwood that also support the programming and help make sure it gets out to everybody. So you might be wondering, what is Solar United Neighbors? We are a vendor neutral national nonprofit. And what that means is that we do not care who you go solar with, be it, brand A or brand B, or what equipment that they use. We're there to support you in your solar journey, no matter how you're getting your solar. So we help people to go solar. We help them join together and fight for their energy rights. And even if you're not able to go solar on your home, we're still there for you and your energy rights. That might look like making sure credits are available through the government for your taxes in case you can go solar in the future. That might look like making sure that community energy programs are available in your area so that you can reduce your bill while being able to subscribe to solar or wind or biomass that is generating the power somewhere else. So we're just trying to make sure that everybody has equal access to clean produced energy. On a national level, we have helped over 10,000 families to go solar. That is over 80 megawatts of installed solar. Here in Ohio, our program has been around since 2015. We've helped about 740 people to get solar on their homes or small businesses. That is 5.6 megawatts of installed capacity. And one of the other things that I really like out of this list is how many solar jobs that's created. And that is an additional 142 jobs. That is in everything from additional manufacturing that's been needed because of how many people are getting it installed to those installers like we see on this roof right here. And this is an Ohio home. All the photos that you will be seeing throughout this presentation, I'm pretty sure all of them, are from Ohio. So you might see some homes that look familiar. They might even be in your neighborhood. So how did Sun get started? Back in 2007, Anya's son, Walter, went to see An Inconvenient Truth, which was like an Al Gore film at the time. And he came home like most, young people do, all enthusiastic, and was like, Mom, we need to take steps. We need to do something. Let's go solar. And Anya, thinking that sounded like a good plan, was like, yeah, let's do that. And then whenever she started trying to go solar on her home, she found that there was a lot of red tape. It was more expensive than she thought it would be. And she started thinking, what can we do about this to make this a better process? And if we're going to go through this on our home, how do other people do this journey? And so what her choice was then was to say, hey, Walter and his friend Diego, if you want to do this so bad, if you want solar on this home, how about we see if other people need solar? So they went door to door, and in the end, 50 homes in their Mount Pleasant neighborhood ended up going solar together. And that was our very first like program launch. And after she did it there and beat, all the bureaucracy and got them a little bit better price, and everybody had support throughout the process, other people started approaching her and saying, if you did this there, how do we do this here? And now, we operate with members in all 50 states. We've had more than 400 of those solar co-ops and other types of bulk purchase programs ran. And we've got those 10,000 families that have been able to go solar with us. So we have a bit of a theory of change here that we want to help you go solar with support of new and existing systems, because we know sometimes even those experienced solar owners need help with things. We want to help people join together so that they can pool their resources. We do that through happy hours and solar tours, through little webinars like this, big webinars on a national level. And then we want to help everybody fight for their energy rights. And that looks different in every area of the country. Here in Ohio, that might be something like an HOA and condo solar access law that we helped to fight for and pass a couple years back. Somewhere else, that might be net energy metering, which we'll talk more about later. Or it might be on a federal level that we might be helping with the Inflation Reduction Act tax credits and making sure that those stay in play for people. But we help bring folks together for a little bit of everything, and make their voices be heard, because you know how that goes. We're all stronger together. We also want to work for equity. We realize that the system is imbalanced. It might be a coal plant or a fracked gas plant in your neighborhood. It might be that you don't want to live next door to those extraction sites anymore. And so, what we want to do and what we want to help with is helping people on an individual basis to go solar, to change that energy system, and to learn how to work in that energy system. So the third picture that popped up here, the picture on the far right of your screen, shows one of our installers out training the next generation of installers. So he works with one of our jobs programs here in the Central Ohio area to help them get experience and learn if rooftop installation is something that they want to pursue in education and everything. And that's the beauty of programs like this, that it helps us to pull people together from all different places in their path. Maybe they're just wanting to be an installer. Maybe they're wanting to be one of our homeowners. So no matter what it is, though, we hope to help people get there in a fair and equitable way. So we're going to cover three primary things today. First up is solar technology. Then we're going to move into solar economics. And last, we'll work into how the Solar Switch Together program works as a whole. And now we're going to jump into our first section, solar technology. So how do solar panels work? We all call them solar panels. I do, everybody else that I know, but their actual name is solar photovoltaics, or PV. And that is what the actual piece of your system is that converts that light energy that hits it into electricity that your home uses. Those solar panels are each made up of a bunch of different parts and pieces. You've got your frame. It's typically made of aluminum so that it's nice and strong, but also lightweight. You've got a glass layer and then an encapsulant to help protect those solar cells, which are the actual part that generates the power. You've got another layer of encapsulant and then a back sheet. And then on the very back of the panel, you'll find that there's like this little junction box, and that's what lets you have a way to pull the power out of that panel, because otherwise it would just sit there looking like a framed photo of a solar cell. So whenever you're looking at your roof and you're wondering, do I have a good roof for solar? The first thing you're going to be looking at is the orientation. This far north in the country, Your best facing roof will be your south facing roof. East and west work fairly well. So we also recommend those. If you only have, an odd shaped house that just has one roof face and it's north, we're going to advise you that that one is not economical. Hopefully, you're built like a normal house and you have a couple faces to your roof, and that isn't the case. But, things do happen. So if you have just a north facing roof available, it's not going to work out very well. You could still put solar there. It's just not going to generate enough energy to make a good return on your investment. And that's why we would tell you it's not an economical choice. You, of course, want little to no shading because what you're trying to collect is the sunlight, not the shade. So that one's pretty obvious on why, but we are not going to advise you to take out trees because trees are important to sequester carbon. We all like to breathe. Breathing is arguably more important than electricity generation. So we're going to leave those trees in place. They also help to keep your home cooler in the summer. So you want to leave those trees big and healthy, even though they do provide some shade and maybe make your roof a little less eligible. You also want to make sure that you have a roof that is in good condition and has the space for panels. You're not looking for a ton of space. I live in a ranch myself that's only 1,100 square feet. So it doesn't take a lot of roof to be able to have solar. The average size system is only looking for about 250 square feet. But what it does mean is if you have like the Dr. Seuss style house that has like 14 little dormers, or you live in a geodesic dome or a castle, maybe your roof space is a little more broken up and doesn't have, one contiguous 250 square foot area. And it may not work out really well to have solar because of those odd shapes. So, but for the most part, normal houses that are drawn, that built just like a little kid draws a house, like a triangle with a little square at the bottom, those are going to work out super well to have the proper space for solar. A fourth thing that we don't really mention on here, but we probably should, is the age of your roof. You want to put it onto a newer roof than an older roof only because, roofs have a lifespan and you don't want to have to take down those solar panels, pay for them to be stored, and then pay for them to be put back up. So if you've just recently replaced your roof, if your roof is, only a couple years old, maybe 5 or 10 years old, and it still has a good 15, 20 years of life left in it, you're in a really good space to be able to go solar. Just remembering that those panels do last 20 to 25 years, and you want to leave them stationary if you can. So a system component that we don't see after the installation takes place is called racking. This is the piece of the installation that holds those solar panels onto your roof. It's made to hold up through hurricanes and tornadoes. So as long as your roof stays in place, your solar is going to stay in place. And that's really important to note. So in this case, the bigger picture that we see is racking going onto a shingle roof, which is our most common type of roof here in Ohio. These roofs, it'll penetrate through, and they use a special sealant to make sure nothing leaks. That has its own warranty against leaking and everything else. Some of your roofing companies do like to come out and do like a re-inspection of your roof once they have had penetrations like this into it. So make sure that you're following up with your roofing company as well, just in case that's something they prefer to see, especially if you have a warranty from that roofing company. The little side picture on the left here is of solar panels on a slate roof. So they are able to put them on there. Some of the companies have experience with that, some of them don't. So it's always good if you have a slate roof, there's a spot you can drop that in the notes whenever you're registering for our programs. We'll help you find an installer that does work with that. And if you happen to be doing this on your own, not through our program, and don't have that available slot, just make sure that you're telling them what your roof surface is so that they A, order the correct type of racking, and B, so that they can, make sure that they're experienced and doing a good job for you. And if you don't know what type of roof you have, that's okay too. You can let them know that, obviously, whenever they come out to, those installers come out to inspect your roof and get you ready, or whenever we look at, the satellite views to help you review some things, We might be able to tell. They're definitely going to be able to tell. So if you're not sure what it is, we'll help you figure it out. If you happen to have, or you're thinking about going solar on like an office building, you might have a metal roof with standing seams. In that case, those are held on by these little clamps that are pictured on the left side of the screen. So there are no penetrations, and they're holding them down really nice and tight so that they don't go anywhere. It's a very similar process overall for the time of installation and everything else as your standard shingle roofs are. It's just made for a different surface. So if you do have a standing seam metal roof, you've not been eliminated from being able to go solar. You just will have to have different equipment issued to hold those solar panels on. There's also ground mounts. So if you have a bit more space, maybe you're trying to come up with, some shading in your yard. I know we're currently looking at in my home adding a pergola to the backyard, and we're thinking we'll put solar on top of it whenever we do that, so that we can make our array just a little bit bigger. So those are options. Do be aware that the structure that is being built on has a cost because it doesn't exist already. Most of us don't just have poles standing in the middle of the yard. So there's that additional expense. And there's also usually an additional expense for the trenching because they need to dig into your ground, bury your conduit with your wire in it so that your power can get to where you're wanting to use it. So those will both be figured in though. You'll have a line item on your, cost for that. So that is something that will be very obvious and you would know what it is up front before signing anything. And if you happen to be in like an apartment building or you have like a flat space on your roof, you can still add solar to that. It takes a ballasted system for those flat roofs. They don't have penetrations, they have these weights that help to hold them down. You will need to get like a structural check of your building to make sure that it can take the additional weight of the ballasted system as well as those panels. But again, that's something that they will help you figure up. They'll talk about. You can see these ones are pitched a little bit. That's so that they aren't laying just completely flat. They'll pitch them to the south so that they get good sunlight. And this can be a very good option for those flat roofs. So a system component that people don't usually know about until it gets installed in their house is called the inverter. So whenever those solar panels make that energy up on top of your roof, it comes out as DC, which, direct current isn't something that's used in your home. Our homes use AC, alternating current. And so in order to be able to change that energy over from DC to AC, you need a device, and that's your inverter. Most commonly is this middle one is what's used. Those are a string inverter and they'll have little DC optimizers paired with it. So I have two of these in my own basement for my system. So what happens is the power comes off of your roof, it goes down there and it goes into this little box. The inverter works its magic and it spits it back out as AC that all of your home devices can use. The other place that can take happen is on the right side, you'll see the micro inverter, and that's a little tiny inverter that's on the back of each one of those panels, and it converts the energy right there from DC to AC before it sends it down into your house. If you do end up with a larger system, like you are a small business and you're getting a commercial size array, or you have a ground mount array, you may, have the other type of string inverter that's pictured on the right. It's a slightly larger device. It doesn't usually come with those DC optimizers, but you don't need to know which one of these things that you would need or which one is best for your system. That's going to be for the installer. They're going to talk to you about it. They'll ask for maybe your opinion or double check with you that is what you want. But for the most part, they're trained. They went to school for this. They've had special classes on it. They work with this equipment every day. I always say trust their judgment unless it sounds really off, and then you can check in with us or some other experts. That's why we're always telling you to get a couple bids so you can compare those things. They should look relatively the same. This piece probably looks pretty familiar to you. This is your electric panel. I am assuming, since you're joining us today on the internet, which is powered by electricity, that you do have an electric panel in your home. So that is how your solar connects to your house. It's going to come into your panel just like your main power line does, and then it's going to be able to feed that power to your other devices. If you have a very full box, like let's say that all those little like gray lines down at the bottom of this were the little black breakers, and your panel is full, you're probably going to be looking at an upgrade. If you're still working off of like a tube system, a fuse, twisting things in, you're probably not in code anymore, and you're going to be looking at an upgrade. But for the most part, modern homes built after the late 60s usually do not need to have anything done with their electric panel. It's usually what you need to be able to run the system and be able to operate it and connect it to your house. So, some important terminology that you're going to hear me tossing about today is kilowatts. That's the amount of energy coming off of the system. That's how we measure it. Kilowatt hours, which is probably what you see on your electric bill. That is the amount of electricity you've used over the course of time. Um, in my case, the way I like to keep track of these is I think of kilowatts as a garden hose. It's the amount of something flowing through at any given moment. And then the kilowatt hours is the thing I'm trying to fill up. So in my case, I have a very high energy needs home because we have two electric vehicles. My husband has this thing for computer technology. So we have them sitting a bit of everywhere. We've got all those energy vampires all the time. And so we need a lot of electricity to fill up our Olympic sized pool of need. So I have a bigger system that gives a higher output, a higher kilowatt of power off of it. And then over the course of a day, I am pulling up more of those kilowatt hours because I have a higher need for them. What we're going to have anybody do in this, though, is we're going to make sure your system is right sized. So that means there isn't one size fits all on homes. You might get a 6 kilowatt array for your house and it suit most of your needs. The next person over might need a 13 kilowatt system in order to cover theirs. So you want your system to be what your home needs. We're going to have those prices based on either the size that you need. Maybe you have a goal in mind. You're wanting to cover 100% of your power consumption. Maybe you're wanting to make sure that, you've got extra power in the case of outages that happen routinely in your area so that you are able to, keep things running in the case of an outage. And so, those systems are going to be varied by what you tell us you want it to do and what you want it to cover. On average, here in Ohio, a 6 to 7 kilowatt system covers most of those for most people. Here in the picture, you can see that this is about a 4.8 kilowatt array. Each of those panels measures approximately 5 feet by 3 feet. We've got our little like 6 foot tall invisible figure guy here at the edge to show you, what it looks like in comparison to a person. If you're getting a 400-watt panel installed, those 12 panels, that's how we come up with the 4.8 kilowatts. So one of the things I mentioned that we fight for earlier is net metering or net energy metering. Sometimes you'll just hear people call it NEM, N-E-M. And that is the process by which, let's say that you've got a nice, bright, sunshiny day, and your system is a 10 kilowatt system, and it's generating at its peak of efficiency at that moment. And you're getting that 10, maybe just a tiny bit more, maybe like 11 kilowatts off of it. And your house is sitting there and you're not doing a ton right then. You don't have any cookies baking, you don't have any cars charging, you're not running the hot tub, and your house is only using a couple kilowatts, one or two. And so then you've got this excess 10 kilowatts that might be generating out from the system. That energy gets pushed out onto the grid so your neighbors can use it. It's going to go to like the next closest available outlet because that's just what, energy does. But as it goes through your meter back out to the grid, your meter is going to, if you've got a really old fashioned meter with the little dials on it, you'll see it spin backwards. It actually spins in reverse. Or if you've got one of those modern meters, like we have pictured here with like the little digital screen, it's going to flash up a bunch of weird codes that mean absolutely nothing to anybody but the power company. Whenever I look at mine, sometimes it's got like 14AB 62. I have no idea what that means, but at the end of the month, I can look at my bill and I can see where I have a credit for the excess energy that's sent back out. And even on a grayer or less sunny day like we have right now in central Ohio, my system is still generating, almost 5 kilowatts, and it's currently pushing about three of those out to the grid because we don't have a ton of things running. There's no cars charging. And so even on a day like today, I'm still making credits to be able to use later. So now we have a little sample here of what your electric bill looks like. So some of these lines are going to be super familiar to you because you'll already have them. You'll have a bill that has generation, distribution, and then like your transmission customer charge. Where mine gets to looking different is that you'll see I have negative numbers. So last year, about this time, well, I guess this is 2 years ago now, but I had a credit running of $26.66. So whenever my bill would come in, instead of it saying you owe this amount, it would be like, this is the amount that's available as a balance on your account. So that's why it says it in a negative. So you can see my generation line shows how much excess generation I have created. The distribution will be lower than what a lot of people's bills will be because I'm pulling less energy over the grid. So that's that energy distribution lines are the smaller ones like in your neighborhood. The less you're using those for intake, the less you're charged for them because you're not using them. And then this customer charge is a fixed rate that covers transmission and other maintenance that the company needs to do. Everybody has to pay those parts because you do expect your electricity to be available if your solar isn't working for some reason. So that brings my balance down to, minus $7.72 for the month. When added onto my previous credits, that meant that I came up to a $34.38 balance. So I didn't owe them anything. They rolled those credits forward to the next month. Obviously that being July, I probably ended up with more credits in August and September. There is a time in Ohio, though, called winter. It gets a bit grayer. The days get shorter. We generate less electricity off of those systems. And so you'll end up with those credits kind of catching up, and you'll usually end up owing just a tiny bit over the course of winter, depending on how your system is built. And then on the other side of the screen here, the other way it reflects on your bill, and you probably see these now too, is that it's how much is delivered. The additional information that you get whenever you have solar or some other type of generation is that it shows how much is received. So in this case, they delivered 705 kilowatt hours of power to my home over the course of a month. And that might have been because we were using more energy than the solar was generating in any given moment. That might have been because we had some stormy weather or overnight usage. But whatever the case, I ended up sending them 897 excess kilowatt hours that I wasn't using. And so that's how we ended up with that little bit of a credit. So a system component, this is completely optional, but if you live somewhere where we keep having these bigger storms and you keep having the grid go down for longer and longer periods of time, something that you might want to consider is a battery. Part of the reason that you might want to do that is because whenever the power goes off during those storms or from, a service outage for, car accident or whatever else takes it down in your area, your solar will automatically shut down as well. And that's because it's generating power. If it's pushing power out to those lines and they're not expecting there to be power and those linemen are working on that line, it will fry them. We do not want to fry any linemen today. Those are average everyday people that work and help us get our service restored, help us keep our service. So we want to protect them. So those systems shut down. The difference is if you have a battery, you still have access to that power. Your system will still keep generating and filling that battery back up because it is isolated. It does something called islanding. So it blocks it from leaving the house, and then it lets you still have access to your power. So if you have frequent outages in your area, if you've got critical loads at home, maybe you've got a sump pump that likes to run every time there's a storm. Maybe grandma is plugged into oxygen in the back bedroom. Whatever it is, if you're not wanting that to turn off, if you want your well pump to keep working, if you want grandma to keep breathing, you might want to have battery storage so that you're ready for it. Or if you're, looking at that emergency situation that there's more and more bad weather, it's more severe whenever it's coming through, and you're wanting to make sure that you have, access to power. If you're out for days at a time, then, a battery might be something that you want to consider. In some areas of the country, we're starting to see that the power companies will buy energy back from you at certain times of the day whenever they're having shortfalls. We do not have that yet in Ohio. It's not even in a pilot program, but that is something that some areas are starting to consider, and a reason that even if you don't want battery now, that it might be something you want to think about in the future. And if you have any additional questions about batteries, you can hit up our guide. It's at solarunitedneighbors.org/storage. And don't worry if you don't catch that, write it down right now. If you go to our website, there's the little magnifying glass on the search bar. You can enter in that, you're looking for battery, backup, storage, whatever options, and that will help you to find it. So another system component that you might see in yours, this is how mine works, is called the consumption meter. This lets you have a very solid view of not only what energy you are, creating in your house, but how you're consuming it and what is being shared out to the grid. So you've got your little devices. You can see them in this little sketch here, in the middle of the screen. And then this is my actual panel that's in this picture. We had the cover off whenever they were here doing the installation. And so we snapped a picture of what these little consumption meters look like. And those just go around the main line coming in, and then the feed line, for your home. And they read what energy is coming in from the grid and what energy is going back out to the grid. And that way you have a picture of it yourself. You're not just taking the word for it from the power company, and you're also able to tell what amount was used inside of your home. So my Solar Edge, which is the app here for my system, and this might be any number of different systems. So if you end up with something else, it'll look a little different. We can help walk you through it though. But it shows not only what my system is producing, but then it shows also what I'm consuming. So I'm able to tell at any given moment, that today was a good day, that I made 56.9 kilowatt hours, and I only consumed 34 of those. So then I know, how much was shared out to the grid, and, how that was balancing out. The power company does keep track for you, but they only keep track of what they receive. They don't keep track of what you used of your own. So if you don't have something like this inside your device, which most of them come with it built in now, you won't have quite as complete a picture. If your system doesn't have it, it's something that can be added on for somewhere between $200 and $600. But like I said, a lot of them are coming with it now. It's just a piece of it. So that's something good to ask about though. Be like, what visibility will I have to my energy consumption? Is that something I can add onto my system? And that way, you can get what you're wanting to see with it. A completely optional component, but one that you might want to think about, is Critter Guard. So what this is, you can see it here at the bottom of these panels, is this little tiny fencing. For those who've had chickens or some other type of small animals in your care, you probably recognize it. It's the same type of like little wire stuff that we use to build those homes for them. But in this case, it's keeping them out instead of keeping them in. Squirrels and birds like to build nests underneath of your panels because it's weather protected for them. It's a nice little solid roof. Any energy generation and movement that you have creates a little bit of heat, and those panels are black on the surface, so they're attracting even more of that, so it stays nice and cozy warm. I mean, who doesn't want a nice little warm apartment? But whenever they're living under there, their nests cause roof damage. Their waste from them, in both cases, both squirrels and birds, is very acidic. It'll chew into your panels. The nests can also cause water damming, so you might end up with water pushed back up under shingles or into some place that you don't want. And they chew on things, especially in the case of squirrels, not so much the birds, but they'll chew on those wires, which is what we see in this one picture here. You can actually see where the little squirrel got burned up whenever he chewed on this panel. Obviously, this panel was no longer usable, but things like that, could cause far more damage than the cost of those little critter guards to begin with. On my system, I have a rather large system on my house, but it was about $600 in cost to get those squirrel guards put on. Each one of those panels is $1,200, somewhere in that ballpark, depending on its size. So you don't want to have to be replacing that. One panel and the repairs from it are going to cost you more than the critter guard just does up front. For those of you joining us from Northern Ohio, where you have that wonderful lake effect snow, one of the things, whoops, we left the squirrel notes on here. We will get this updated. But one of the things that you might want to think about adding is the snow guard. That's these little finger looking things at the edge of the panels. And what those do is, in the case that you've got that really heavy, deep snow on your panels and it starts to heat up during the day, like it does, the black panels will attract that and the snow will melt, and it's all going to want to slide off in one gigantic sheet all at once. So if you've got, 6, 12, 18 inches of snow sitting up there, what you're going to want to have happen is something to help break that up so that as it comes down, it's not one giant sheet that's going to like smash into you and hit you, or crush other things underneath of it. So you want to have these little snow guards. I do not have those here in Central Ohio. So if you're joining us from Central or Southern Ohio, this is probably something that you can kind of ignore and skip. But again, if you're in Northern Ohio, especially if you have a 2 or 3-story house, so it's going to be coming down with a little bit more force, you might want to consider this and talk to your installer. And the last piece of optional equipment that we're going to mention here is an EV charger, or an EVSE, which is EV service equipment. And why you might want to think about that part or piece now is because A, you have an electrician on site. They're already doing things to your house. If you've ever had to hire an electrician and have them come out for anything before, you know that just to come see you, grace you with their presence, they're going to charge you like $150. So while you have them there, you might as well use that service fee to your advantage and have them take care of all kinds of little tasks. It also has an installation savings. In a lot of cases, these installers have bought, these giant spools of wire that they're using to run your other equipment. They will be able to bulk price in that run of wire from the panel to wherever your EV charger is installed. And you don't have to have it installed as like a hardwired unit like we see on the left-hand side. You can have it installed as an outlet. These are really handy for a second dryer, for your Uncle Al's RV whenever he's visiting you and you want to let him be able to power up his RV from your house. Or if you get a fancier box installed like we see here, it'll have that 1450, that bigger outlet that you'd use for EV charging or for your Uncle Al's RV. Or it will also have like a standard outlet. So maybe you've got a spot on the side of your house by your garage that doesn't have an outlet now. You've always wanted to be able to use your drill over there on that end of the house, or you wanted to be able to plug in some holiday lights. Now you'd have that outlet available. It also lets you future-proof your garage and driveway in case you do add an EV or a kiln or a welder in the future. You've already got that outlet there. And again, bulk purchase price for the supplies and equipment. Because they're buying a bunch of these things all at once, it's going to be a little bit lower cost than if you're doing it individually. And now we're finished with our solar technology section. We're going to move on to solar economics. So solar is a good investment. Since it first came onto the market, it has dropped tremendously. If you had been back there in the 70s with Jimmy Carter putting it on the White House, it would have cost you an astronomical amount in comparison to what a similar size array would today. And that's in part because it's no longer a specialty item, it's no longer a boutique product, it's a routine thing that we see. So it has a good return on investment. And right now, we still have a 30% federal tax credit. How our solar programs help with things like this, though, is that it reduces the overall cost. So normally they have a whole bunch of different costs, those installers do, to bring this to you. So they've got the system components. Whenever they're buying more of those, obviously it lowers the cost for them. Their labor costs, they are hiring people and training people continuously. But whenever they're able to keep those people in their employment year round because they've got more jobs going on, it also helps to reduce their cost of that. And then the overall soft costs are there for things like advertising, for finding new customers, for educating customers. And in this case, we're doing a lot of those things for them. We're helping to, walk you through this 101 today. We're sending you materials about what you should expect throughout the process. And they're not having to do those things. They're not having to go find you. You're finding them. And so all of that reduces their costs and brings down the price of your system. As I mentioned, right now, thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, we do have a 30% federal tax credit that bumped back up to that 30% in 2022 whenever that Inflation Reduction Act passed. It should be in play through 2032. I'm saying should because we're going to cover that in the next slide, but there are some changes afoot on that. If it stays in play in 2033, we'll start seeing it sunset down to 26% and in 2034 to 22%. But we're, of course, advising that if this is something that you're wanting to pursue, if solar is like your dream and you're wanting it on your house, that you go ahead and do it right now because those solar tax credits may not be this way at the end of the year. The House just passed their side of the budget, and it takes away all of those tax credits on December 31st of this year. So if you have your system installed and interconnected, which is the permission to operate, you're turning your system on, it's starting to generate power. Both of those pieces have to happen before December 31st. Or as they're trying to enact at this moment, taking away that Inflation Reduction Act credit, it will roll this back. And so there won't be tax credits next year. So again, not to be alarmist or anything, but as it stands at this moment, the House has passed it to take this away. So now we're going to the Senate. We've got lots of things going on for that. You can visit solarunitedneighbors.org/take action. It's going to talk to you about how to protect those rights, things to do about it, things you can, work on, and ways you can sign and contact your elected officials to tell them that this is important to you. We've got a lot of people, a lot of very smart, we've got a lot of very, good people working on that. Not just us, but organizations like SEIA, which is the Solar Energy Industry Association, installers, other, groups like Power Clean Future Ohio and the Ohio Environmental Council. Everybody's sending in letters, not just for this, but for all kinds of other credits and programs and stuff as well that we want to help protect. But again, biggest and most important parts are if you're considering solar, get it done right now because you want to have both your installation and your permission to operate before December 31st, just so that you know what the rules are, so you don't, accidentally outweigh there being tax benefits to it. Moving on to a slightly happier topic, let's talk about what pricing looks like. So, through the Solar Switch program, our pricing drops down to a little under 260 a watt. We went with 260 because it's a nice round number. Those pennies get weird whenever you're doing big math. So, let's look at it this way though. But at 260 a watt, that's about 40 cents a watt less than the average price outside of our programs because they don't have those bulk discounts. So the 5 kilowatt system would come in at about 13,000, 10 kilowatt system at 26,000. Obviously, those system sizes are going to vary based on what your needs are. We just gave the fives and the tens so that you'd have a couple different ballparks to look at. And, obviously, again, easy math. It's way easier to look at fives and tens than it is at 6.2s or something. But we're going to break it down then at your 30% federal tax credit. We're just going to read the 5 line together here. So you've got a $13,000 system. That federal tax credit would be $3,900, meaning at the end of like your first year after you've gave your tax money to your loan, you're going to owe a balance of $9,100. We say that each year with that 5 kilowatt system, conservative estimates are that you're going to save about $851 in electricity. That means over 10 years, you're going to save about $9,100, and over 25 years, you're going to save $25,000. And that's how we can figure up that your net savings overall will be a positive number, that you will have saved about $16,000. Now, there's a bunch of, fuzzy math in there with those estimations. Right now, for all of us here in Ohio, we're experiencing that on June 1st, our power costs will be going up. It doesn't calculate in things like that very well because we can't outguess what the power company is going to do to you. Usually, we estimate that somewhere around a 5% increase on your generation costs might happen a year. Those of you in first energy type of territory, you're probably looking, I think it's 30%, right? On the generation that's going up on June 1st. Here in AEP territory, that's my bill, that is 36% increase on our generation costs. So obviously, that estimated savings is going to change with things like that. The more energy that you're using during the day whenever your stuff is being generated versus overnight is going to change how your savings are. So there's things that you're going to do, there's things that are outside of any of our control with the pricing that are going to change. And then we're estimating the lifetime being 25 years, but those panels are warranted for that type of period of time, meaning they're going to make sure that they're still working and still generating power for that long. You know how companies are. They're going to want to make sure they do not have to pay for replacement of panels. So I would fully expect your panels to last, for more than the 25 years and be generating power still. We even have people that come to us and they talk about having systems installed in the 80s, which, as hard as it is for me to believe, is more than 25 years ago. So, those panels are still working and still out there. If it is working for you, great, keep it. You'll just be saving more money. So there's a bunch of finance options available. You might want to do a home equity line of credit, refinancing to include your solar. You might want to use the installer financing. The only thing I always caution with this is to double check that they're not making money off of offering you financing. It's normal to have an interest rate, but it's not normal for them to tack on, a few $1,000s extra for them taking care of that for you. A lot of times what you'll find is working with your own bank, somebody that knows you and wants to keep your business will offer you the best rate. So that's always something to consider. There are some grant programs like REAP, which stands for the Rural Energy for America program. That is available for farmers and farm-related businesses. So if you do live in a rural area, if you make more than 50% of your income off of farming, talk to us, talk to your installer. We can help you learn about REAP. Again, that is a program that's attached to that Inflation Reduction Act that we mentioned a few slides back. So it's currently in a bit of flux. I would say that if that's something you're wanting to pursue, talk to somebody ASAP. so they can try to get you into that process before anything about it changes. The other thing is that you might want to look at something like the Clean Energy Credit Union. They are a small credit union and they work only on clean energy things. So they kind of specialize in that and they know that super well. I happen to know that their summer rates are sitting around 5% for a solar loan, only because I'm a member of the Clean Energy Credit Union. I did that entirely because I don't like to talk about things that I don't know. So whenever we bought a electric vehicle, which is something they also financed recently, we picked it up with a Clean Energy Credit Union loan just so that I could say, hey, they are good people. I've worked with them. They'll know you on a, first name basis in some cases, as they help you through things. They run a small office out of Colorado. So if you're a super early morning person, you're probably not going to catch them on the phone just because they're in a different time zone. But if you happen to like to call people after work hours here in the East Coast, that's great with Colorado because they're still in. It's normal business hours for them. So you can catch them in the afternoon. But that's always something to look into too. So if you don't have a bank that's offering you a good loan, or if you're wanting to find somebody that specializes in this kind of product that's going to put your money and investments back into things that you want them to be doing, geothermal, solar, wind, electric vehicles, an e-bike, maybe that's something you're looking at, and a newer updated, heat pump, for your home HVAC system. They'll do any of those types of things. We don't get any type of kickback or anything from the Clean Energy Credit Union. We just think they're good folks, and like I said, I do banking with them now, just so that we can tell you they're good folks, or at least I feel like I can tell you they're good folks. That is all of our financy kind of information. Take all of it knowing that we are not financial professionals. We just do this. Maybe we stayed at a Holiday Inn last night kind of stuff. That, that's not what my, background is in, but I've taken advantage of the tax credit myself. So I do know what those forms look like. I'm always happy to share what knowledge I have, just keeping in mind that it's not, anything super professional, super official that I'm sharing with you. So unit 3, though, will be on how our Switch Together program works. So why would you want to join a Switch Together program versus just going solar on your own? Well, obviously, we give a good value on that installation. It's usually some of the best pricing you can find because of those bulk purchase options. It gives you support throughout the process. And even if you decide that solar switch is not for you, this bulk purchase isn't the right time, or that's not the company you want to use, we're still here. Give us a call, drop us an email. We're still going to be there to help you. Um, you can connect with fellow solar enthusiasts. Those other people that are here in the webinar today that you see popping up in the Q&A over there, in the chat over there, those are all other people who are interested in solar just like you are. So you're getting connected to them. We have in-person events. We'll be out tabling. Even like tomorrow, I'll be in Upper Arlington at the community center. So you could come, to that place, meet people in person that are also, excited about solar and want to learn things. And you get to become part of the growing solar movement. You can see here where we had, a big Save the Solar rally, where we took people and helped them to fight for their energy rights. And we gathered them all together and, put them in their yellow shirts, and we go into the state house or go into the, office of the, in our case, the PUCO, so the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. Sometimes we'll go there, to tell them what it is that we want and what we want them to keep doing. Because, one little voice they might ignore, but you get a whole group together, it's harder to ignore that. Thanks to iChooser, who is our partner in the Switch Together programs, the installers are vetted in order to be able to participate in that reverse auction. So 3 or 4 months ago, before the program even launched, was even publicly available, we had what was called a reverse auction. So all of the installers in an area were contacted. They were let know that we were going to be having a program. They were offered the opportunity to go through a financial background check, to make sure that they had their equipment supply secured, because we knew that there might be some instability in ordering and stuff. We made sure that they have a good trained workforce and would be able to handle this amount of jobs. And then if they had met all those criteria, they were able to put in a bid for what they would want to be paid per watt of solar. And so they all came back with pricing, and then iChooser and us, we looked at that pricing that they offered. We helped to find like a balanced middle. So let's say that one guy was like, I could do it at 245, and the next guy was like, I can only do it for 270. Then we would have looked at a price somewhere in the middle, like 260, and we would have told them, hey, you know, obviously you've got a little bit of flexibility here. We would like to pay you a little bit more money so that you're using the very best equipment and able to get more trained workforce on your staff. And hey, we'd like you to come down just a little bit to meet other, you know, installers where they are. And then, those that wanted to participate at that set price move forward, and those are the companies that will be talking to you. So all of those bids, though, are for the exact same equipment and pricing. So no matter what installer is listed in your letter, know that anybody else that's receiving a letter like that through the program is going to see the exact same equipment and pricing. So everything's consistent. So even if it's installer A is the one servicing your side of town and your friend lives in installer B on the other side of town space, they're going to be getting the exact same equipment pricing. Where it'll start looking different is if you said you wanted a battery or you need a giant system and they need a small system. So do expect to see some differences in the overall total, but the little pieces that get you there are all going to have the same cost to begin with. So where are we in this switch together process? So we launched our programs in April. We started having these learning sessions where you could attend, get information, you could sign up online at either Switch Together Central Ohio, Switch Together Columbus, Switch Together Northeast Ohio, or Switch Together Cuyahoga County, depending on where you're located. We we started telling people, spread the word. We want your friends and neighbors to join. We want to help as many people get through this process as possible. We're now in May, which is where we're continuing to do learning and we're continuing to have community engagement. People are having their proposals roll out. They're starting to accept those offers and say, yes, this is the price I want to move forward with. Yes, this is the type of installation I want to have. You get to decide on your own in your time if that is the right decision for you. And if it isn't, that's okay too. It's not the right choice for everybody all the time. You're gonna decide that. There's no obligation to move forward today. There's no obligation to move forward with our programs, period. We're just there to offer you the education and the support you need to decide if this is right. June 25th is the sign up deadline. So by June 25th, if you're wanting to do this, you need to, be like, yes, I want to do this, and telling them that. Otherwise, you won't be able to participate in our program, just because we do want to make sure that everybody that participates in this switch program not only has their installation, but has their interconnection. And we know that those installers are taking on more and more work, and that there's going to be a certain time of the year that they're just not going to be able to get those things done. So we set a hard deadline that is a complete stop of this program, June 25th. And that way we can make sure that we can do our very best, that those installers can do their very best to get anybody who's participating through the program by the end of the year. Just because we don't know what's happening to the tax credits, and we don't want to take a chance on telling you there's this 30% credit available and then it's not, because it took too long or because they changed the rules. So that deadline is sitting there. That is, and the contracts get signed directly with the installer. So that's not something that I'm going to be there for, or that anybody else with the program is going to be there for. That's going to be between you and the installer. You are the direct owner. This is a, direct process. There's no middle guy. We're just helping you connect with information and, a vetted installer. We're not in between you and your solar. You'll have your installation and a follow up. And once we have everybody installed, probably I'm going to guess the start of next year sometime, we'll have a party where we'll get as many people together from these processes as we can. We'll let everybody celebrate and meet each other. We're back to doing those in person. A few years ago, whenever I went through the process in 2020, we didn't get to have our party in person. But, it's a good time where you get to compare things. Everybody brings pictures of their solar. We all talk through what it was like for us, and what kind of savings we're seeing. So we have a nice little time with that. But we try to wait on everybody to get finished before we have those. So that's our process. That's where we are in this. What's next? If you're in Columbus, sorry I didn't add the Cuyahoga link, but we can give it to you here. So if you're in Columbus, it's switchtogether.com/Columbus. You can also use Central Ohio if you're outside of Columbus, but in any of the counties that touch Franklin. So like Licking, Pickaway, Fairfield, Madison, anybody like that and beyond. Those are all participating. So that's switchtogether.com/Central Ohio. If you are up in Cuyahoga County, look up that program. That is at switchtogether.com/Cuyahoga County. That will take you to the link to register for up there. The programs are pretty smart too. So if you enter a zip code, it's completely like off base. If you went to the Columbus link and entered for Oberlin, it's going to take you to the appropriate page, just because that's how it works. But it's nice to be able to see the information that's specifically for you. So, and then you've also got switchtogether.com/Northeast Ohio. So if you're outside of Cuyahoga County, if you are in Oberlin, if you are, in anything like Lake County, maybe you're up in Mentor, you can punch that in and it will find you. And again, that's the Cuyahoga County and then like all the counties that touch it. So, you know about where you live, and you know what you touch and what you don't. You can figure out if you're in one of these programs. If you're outside of all of those areas altogether, we have wonderful programming called Ready, Set, Solar. You can find that on our website. That works for anybody anywhere in the country, not even in Ohio, where we walk you through, we help you to find, an installer. We help you to understand the process, get all the information. We just don't help you find a single installer through a bulk purchase. But we will help you locate some ethical solar installers that do good work. Then if you're curious what a large solar array looks like, this is my house. That's a 13.4 kilowatt array. Again, this is way more than most people need, but we have 2 electric vehicles in our household. My daughter, who lives somewhere else, also has an electric vehicle. So whenever she comes over to visit, she likes to charge here to get free electricity, as she calls it. I'm like, still paying for it, dear, just free to you, maybe. But yeah, so we have a lot of electrical needs, so we have a bigger system than most. But on average, they can be put on all kinds of sections of your roof. So the big front section of my house, 18 panels, is south. And then there's 12 on east and 12 on west on the garage. So, you can space them out and put them in all kinds of different ways. If you liked what you've seen here today, or you want to come hang out with me, tomorrow night at Upper Arlington, or on Saturday at a farmer's market, or maybe you like to go to the State House and yell at your senator, we're always looking for volunteers. You can scan this. You can visit our website, solarunitedneighbors.org/volunteer. There's opportunities available for everything from tabling to distributing flyers to taking photos and videos. We luck out and even have a volunteer that has a drone and has a license so that he can operate that. And he will frequently take pictures for us, which is really great that we have that available as a resource, and that we're not having to, as a nonprofit, find the money to pay for that. So if you've got some sort of magic skill that you'd love to share with us, we would love to have it. We've taken all kinds of people. And then today and always, I am Mariah Williams. This is my contact information. So if you're trying to reach out to us, you can hit us up at ohteam@solarunitedneighbors.org. We will be available now to take your questions.